this is Christina Barn. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barn. Today, we're going to be talking about this story. Sometimes you hear stories and you're like, can that be real? Is that a thing? And so it's not new news, but maybe we haven't talked about it yet. But in New York City, they're going to be giving out cards to migrants for their food. And so 50 Cent said something about it. And he's like, well, maybe Trump is the answer. And of course, New York didn't take kindly to that. Joy Reid said something to 50 Cent trying to break down, explain the stuff. And Mayor Adams was just like, 50 Cent reach out to me. Apparently they did communicate, but things like this rub people the wrong way. And Stephen A. Smith had some comments that I'm going to share with you guys. And so the question is this going to finally be the election where people are kind of like, okay, we need to take the black vote and not give it over to Democrats like by 80+%. Just hand it to them. We need to just hold back our vote and be like, we need to, in the words of Stephen A. Smith that he said one time, he's like, we need to be wooed a little bit. And so people have made such suggestions before. And obviously the black vote was pretty militant, was still voting for Democrats. Black men, gave Donald Trump a chance a little bit, like he improved minority vote a bit. Black women are pretty militant with voting Democrat. And unfortunately for Trump, he did lose some of his white voters actually. But I don't know if this is going to be the time, but the things are pretty bad, and it's right in people's faces because of some strategic moves from Abbott, because of some strategic moves from DeSantis, mostly Abbott, but that people were mocking and saying was a political, stunt or whatever, that has been really, really solid as far as strategy. That a lot of Democrats are now faced with the reality of having to deal with immigration. So immigration is like the number one thing that people are talking about, people are concerned about upcoming with the election. People are still concerned about the economy and other stuff like that, but this ties into that. Obviously, people are concerned about their safety, they're concerned about fentanyl and all that other stuff. And there seems to be no handle on it. And Joe Biden and Democrats are pointing the finger at Republicans. They came out with a deal the other day. We've heard things about the deal. And so the deal actually came out. And there's things about the deal that it's basically dead on arrival, and the Democrats are trying to say, oh, the Republicans wanted a deal, and now the deal is out, and now they don't want it at all. It's like, no, they wanted something else. They wanted something better, and you guys don't want to do something better. So in the meantime, Biden could just roll back the things that he undid from the Trump administration to straighten out the border. In the meantime, but anyway, it should be an interesting show today. So before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. So if you like what I do here, you guys can give a donation on the website. It does cost a stream around my website, all that stuff. So you guys want to support, you guys can in that way. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. If you're watching back later, you guys can send super thanks. Appreciate everyone who does that. I do read the super chats as long as they're not like crazy or anything like that. I'll go ahead and read them. But so just FYI, you guys can also check out different merch that we have available at blacktnews.com. I have different mugs and t-shirts that you guys can check out, like this cool Frederick Douglass t-shirt. This is the Constitution is Glorious Liberty document. So that's from his famous "What to the Slave is the 4th of July" speech, which is really incredible. If you have not read it, I do also have books that I've written as well. I have 17 actually that are published. You guys can find me on Amazon, check my stuff out there. I got, children's chapter books, and then like up to like basically new adult stuff. So you guys can check my stuff out. I have my historical fiction fantasy that's available on Black Tea News. Well, you can go find, if you go to the merchandise page, you can find a banner that'll take you to my book website. But if you just search my name on Amazon, you'll find my stuff. this is like the American Civil War meets like X-Men basically, with like superpowers and other stuff like this. So it's really neat. Speaking of superpowers and X-Men, I saw some of the art for the revival for the X-Men 97 cartoon. So they're just basically redoing the cartoon that we grew up with and loved. And some of the art looks fine. Looks really less detailed. I look and looks new, I guess. um but it doesn't look kind of as I guess detail is probably is probably the best way to put it. But there's some I don't know. I don't think the Rogue looks as good or the Storm looks as good. I think like Gambit and the Cyclops is fine, but they wanted to make sure that people knew Jubilee was Asian. So there's some of the designs that are fine as an upgrade, but I don't anticipate them putting the same kind of love and appeal that was in the original cartoon. But I guess I don't have plans to watch it because I'm still not on a Disney kick. Anyway, um, I was gonna jump right into my story, but I recalled really quickly. Did you guys know that Nikki Haley was on SNL over the weekend? She did like a cold open, and I'm just gonna play this quick. It's just a quick second. I'm gonna share my screen so you guys can see this on Twitter. And I shared this. My tweet's not on the share here, but I thought this just kind of reeked of desperation a bit. So here's just a little snippet from it. Hopefully it's not enough for me to get like dinged.
I was just curious, what would you say was the main cause of the Civil War? And do you think it starts with an S and ends with a lavery?
Yep, I probably should have said that the first time. And live from New York, it's Saturday night.
I was just curious.
That's all I wanted to show you guys. So in Hollywood, there's been this long thing of if you do something bad or terrible or belief that you just go on SNL and you make fun of yourself. At least I was having a conversation with my sister about that, and that's what she sort of brought up. And I'm like, I don't think that politics works the same way though. It just I don't know what kind of audience she's trying to reach with that. I'm assuming that she can make it out of the primary, which kind of seems a bit hopeless on her part, unless she convinces a lot of people to kind of switch their party and come in and just vote for her just so they can go ahead and not vote for her in the general election. So I don't understand the strategy there. A lot of times in politics, when people do something silly like that or dumb like that, they'll apologize. Even if it's something egregious, they'll do like a firm apology or something, and then they'll just kind of move on from it. And when people ask about it, they'll just kind of dismiss it. And maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but I can think of this specifically with Trump, different circumstances where, if you ask about it, you just will kind of skate by it. When the Hollywood Access tape happened during the election in 2016, that was a huge thing. And so he had to come out firm and apologize. He's like, he said it's locker room talk, but he apologized, and then he kind of moved forward, and then he went back on the attack. And Haley's been asked about this a lot. She's given that same, like, I should have said that the first time, and she's addressed that many times. I roasted her with that whole ordeal first happened. But I don't think continuing these humiliation rituals is going to help her. She just kind of needs to keep moving on and talking about, policies that she believes that are going to ultimately help Americans. So, yeah, I don't know who told her to do that, but yikes to me. Maybe you guys liked it or whatever. But anyway, let's move on. Let's actually get to the story. So, the New York Post reported a story that they would be giving funds, like these cards, to illegal immigrants. And so this is from a few days ago. NYC launches a $53 million program to hand out prepaid credit cards to migrant families. Mayor Eric Adams' administration will soon start handing out prepaid credit cards to migrant families being put up in the Big Apple hotels, the Post has learned. The 53 million pilot program run by the New Jersey company Mobility Capital Finance will provide asylum seekers arriving in the Roosevelt Hotel with the city cash to help them buy food, according to the city records. It'll start with a group of 500 migrant families in short-term hotel stays and will replace the current food service offered there, according to City Hall. The cards can only be used at bodegas, grocery stores, supermarkets, and convenience stores, and migrants must sign an affidavit swearing they will only spend the funds on food and baby supplies, or they will be kicked out of the program. So I guess my first question is, what if they don't do that? Are you really going to kick them out of the program? You guys don't even have the guts to kick them out of the country. So anyway, the immediate response card initiative appears akin to the state's food stamp program, dubbed SNAP, which provides lower income New Yorkers with a credit card to cover the cost of meals and will provide funds based on the same scale. The amount of each card will vary depending on size of the family and whether any income is coming in. According to the details of the contract, a family of four, for instance, could be provided nearly $1,000 each month, which comes out to $35 per day for food. Cards will get refilled every 28 days. Hard up residents of city housing were given the same type of cards last year to pay for holiday dinners. Mo Cafe looks forward to partnering with New York City to disperse the funds for asylum seekers to purchase fresh hot food. Said the founder, Will Coxum. The goal is to expand access to financial resources for individuals excluded from banking, such as asylum seekers, while helping the local economy. If the program is a success, the city will expand it to all migrant families staying in hotels, which is roughly 15,000 currently, officials said Friday. Not only will this provide families with the ability to purchase fresh food for their culturally relevant diets and their baby supplies of their choosing, but the pilot program is expected to save New York City more than $600,000 per month, or more than $7.2 million annually. Adam spokesperson Kayla Memolek said the city has been shelling out about $11 per meal to feed migrant families in hotels, something that's long posed a problem as some asylum seekers from various countries in Central and South America, Africa, and Europe may be looking for a taste of home. Just last month, the controversial company DocGo was found to be wasting thousands of dollars on uneaten meals. Migrants confessed to the Post in the days after that they would rather cook in their hotel rooms because the provided meals were so bad. News of the prepaid card program comes a day after the Post received another 137 million in contracts, which city hotels to provide more than 750 rooms to asylum seekers with families. The city is housing just over 66,000 asylum seekers after 1,500 more arrived last week as part of a crisis that is expected to cost 10 billion through 2025. So, lots of things to think about here. So the idea that first of all, I don't know how many people have traveled to New York. You know, obviously it's a huge tourist place. But I've been on trips where I had to like sing with my family and things were tight, or I've gone to uh different conventions that were in New York. When I was there for like BookCon and uh gosh, what's the expo before BookCon? It was like the big book expo. I can't remember what it's called, but it was that, and then BookCon was like a day or 2 days or something. So I was in New York, had to be there for like a whole entire week, and that's expensive. So me and my sister, we didn't even stay in get a hotel in New York. We like stayed in Jersey. We stayed in Jersey, and then I would drive every morning the to the train station, and we'd like take the train, like the subway, like coming in or something, and then we would walk from the subway to the Javits Center. And then I think the first day I think I parked in a garage. I went on an app to get the best deal I could find to stay in the garage. And then the last day, of course, when I had all of our stuff from the hotel, I drove in that day, and it was taxing, but we to do all that. But we did save money just not staying in New York because the fees are crazy. So I said that to say the idea that they're housing all these people up in hotels at no cost when like just to use usually these hotels are just it's just astronomical. And they said they're providing meals that are $11 per meal. That's what they were doing before. So I found this other article about school lunches in New York, the state, in North Syracuse Central School District. School lunch for pre-K through fourth grade is $3.25 per meal, or $16.25 for an entire week of lunch. For fifth grade through high school, that cost is $3.50 per lunch, or $17.50 for the entire week of lunch. A week's worth of breakfast is $11.25, or $2.25 a meal. So I think that uh, if you're getting stuff wholesale for folks that are coming here illegally, I've always thought some of these prices, even when people were holding them in detention centers and how much they were spending a day on folks, I'm like, this doesn't sound like it's adding up correctly. I'm like, how much are they charging the government? And sometimes when it comes to people contracting stuff with the government, they do up the price because they can, because it's easy to just waste our tax dollars. It's like, oh, it's this amount of money. So that's what people are going to pay. So your kid, again, they might pay $3.25 for their meal, and these people who should not be here in the country at all, they pay $11 a meal. So there's that. And then there's them saying, "Oh, we would rather cook in our hotels," and they're wasting food because the food is so bad. I can understand what not wanting to eat food that is so bad. Um, but frankly, if what they have to feed them is that oatmeal that Mr. Beast feeds people to kind of break their will sometimes when he does videos and he holds people for 100 days and he will give them oatmeal or something, uh, or maybe like uh, I don't know, a week or 100 hours or something. It'll just give them oatmeal or whatever. If that's what you have to do, or beans and rice or something, uh, but I don't know what all they're feeding them that they say it's so terrible. And you can have a terrible like school lunch or something. So I can understand, even if it's not beans and rice or something, it not being good. But when I was reading this article, I immediately like started having a memory of when I was a kid. And I don't remember exactly what we were eating. Maybe we're eating like I don't know, Arby's or something. Sometimes we would um go, like, we lived right on the corner of like a Arby's or something. And my sister's in the comments, so maybe she can like tell me what we were eating at the time. But we were complaining about it, and we didn't want to eat it or whatever. And my mom was like, "Shut up, you ungratefuls, you're lucky you ate it in soup." And she just went off. And yeah, we were, I guess, ungrateful at that point in time. And I don't know what exactly like set her off with that day about it. But yeah, there are people. What's this? Oh, the soup. Oh, the soup. Yes. She probably didn't remember that because she was like really little. But I don't. These people who come over here again should not be in the country, are being put up in these hotels, and they're being given food, and they're just like, "Oh, it's so bad. I don't want to. I'd rather cook." Yeah, beggars can't be choosers. And they're just like, "Oh, they're throwing out our food. Let's just give them cash cards or whatever, and make them sign something that says, oh, they won't go ahead and buy something else with it." Uh there's not a way to like rig the card that they can only buy groceries or something or baby stuff with it. They have to sign an affidavit promising they won't do that because people, if people maneuver the cards like they maneuver like SNAP benefits, and there are plenty of people who use their SNAP benefits and they use it for their family, they use it responsibly, whatever. There are people who don't need all that. They'll that they'll have other people pay them money to use their SNAP benefits because they could use money for other stuff, and they just will have extra or whatever. Like, will you give me this cash? I'll use this or whatever. Because if you don't use the money on the card, it just resets or whatever. You lose it. So, um, I can just see people taking advantage of this in all kinds of ways. And sometimes when people are hard up for money or whatever, just giving them more money isn't always the way to help. Like you can see that during COVID, like we gave people, people money for bills and other things. Well, to use it basically how they wanted to, and people did use it for bills and other stuff. Like I use it for bills and whatnot. And but some people went to Nike and bought shoes, or Converse and bought shoes, or Champs and bought shoes, and you could just see that at the mall in different places, or people. This girl who goes to our church, she was talking about how girls that she knew, or like in her area, were using different unemployment funds or whatever, that because people are being paid not to basically work during COVID, or the different not the bonuses, but the different COVID money that people give to go get work done on their bodies and other stuff. So I'm not saying that the money could be used in a way to maneuver to do those kind of things, but shelling out money to people who are already taking advantage of the system doesn't sound like it's a long-term solution. Like maybe you're going to be saving a couple dollars on what you're spending on the food, but the big problem is that they shouldn't be here. The big problem is that New York City is a sanctuary city, and that's why they bust these people to your to your city, because you talked a lot of junk, because you have all this ideology. So someone said, "Hey, we're going to make you live by that ethic." And it's not panning out too good. It's not panning out too good. So anyway, when that story broke out, which I saw the headline, or a snippet of the headline, and I just kind of assumed, I'm like, is there more to this story? Because that sounds really crazy. Yeah, it was a real story. Absolutely a real story. And so 50 Cent, the rapper, he ended up sharing that story, and ended up not tweeting, he put this on his Instagram, and he said, what the bleep, Mayor Adams, call my phone. I don't understand how this works. Somebody explain. And he said, maybe this person can't explain it. I'm stuck. Maybe Trump is the answer. So they did reach out, by the way, and he did change course a bit after Mayor Adams reached out. And Joy Reid did a video. Let me play. Well, I can show his tweet about it, and also play this little snippet of Mayor Adams. So he did reach out, and they did have a conversation. And it's so funny when there's somebody with with some kind of influence as an entertainer, and they say something politically. It's like the Democrats are like, we got to move heaven and earth to kind of set this right or whatever. So uh with COVID and stuff, people wanted to set Nicki Minaj right. 50 Cent, they're like, oh, we got to make sure we have a conversation. But he did like say he wanted to talk to them. But how many people just get to like, have conversations with the mayor or whatever about their policies like that? Like they want to make sure that these big people with these platforms aren't drawing attention to things like this and making people think twice about voting Democrat. But you definitely should think twice, but you should have already thought twice already. But that's why these things get as bad as, they are. So he said, I talked to NYC Mayor Eric Adams and broke down why this pilot program was just put in place. He appeared to be on point and on top of things. Now, I want to talk to Governor Kathy Hochul about the laws preventing him from doing things to make the situation better in New York, and where the proposed 2.4 billion she's planning on spending on migrants is coming from. Not my taxes.
Small policy shift that we're doing on a pilot project with 500 people. If this is successful, we're going to expand it even more so that we can bring down, we got to bring down the cost 20%. We want to bring down the cost, and their team are doing their job. So I told 50 Cent to hit me up. I would love to explain it to him so that he can go out and do another tweet of saying, you know what, Eric is just a smart manager. And now we understand why he was elected by the people of the city of New York to be that this was a small.
Yeah, so they did talk. They got him, they reined him back in. And I don't know what he probably told 50. So they keep shifting the blame. So Eric was like, I have all these things going on, and the governor won't help me out. And so he's pointing to the governor, and the governor like points to like DC and other stuff. So everybody's pointing fingers. Again, the Republican governors, DeSantis did it, but Abbott also is mostly doing it, shipping these people to New York. Much of that has to do with the fact that is their ideology. They claim that they are a sanctuary city. So if you are a sanctuary city, then you take the brunt of the responsibility with these people coming in. When people were complaining about immigration and saying we need to do something, and Trump was doing stuff, they're like, but the Statue of Liberty says this. Well, you guys have the Statue of Liberty. So I guess you have to abide by whatever the heck is written on it that made you feel that people could just pour into our border and that walls are racist. So you have to deal with it. I know that at one point, he wants like people kind of spread around New York or whatever, and not just like so much in the city. And I don't think Hochul really wants to kind of do that. I don't know if that's specifically what he probably told 50 Cent, but I know that's something that's been up in the air as far as conversations. He doesn't want to handle the brunt of this burden, but you could always say, you know what? Republicans have a point on this, and they really need to send all these people back. They could do that. But they don't want to do that. They're complaining about this stuff. But they don't want to really, really fix the problem. Okay. So anyway, one of his people said that Joy Reid had a good video explaining all this. So I want to watch her video with you guys. I've already seen it, but I want to show you guys her video, because this is what the office is like pointing to say, oh, she made a good point about all this stuff to explain it. And I still think they're missing a lot of the point. And Joy Reid is just perpetually terrible. So anyway, give me 1 second and I'll pull this up. And then we'll get to Stephen A. Smith's comments about Democrats and a decision that Black voters can make to make things interesting and to make them start acting right on this stuff.
Okay, guys. So rapper 50 Cent posted on his IG page, on his Instagram, this post, which talks about a $53 million program that the current mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, is launching to hand out prepaid debit cards to migrant families in New York. And he's quoting this New York Post article, the Rupert Murdoch-owned New York Post. Have to always throw that in, say people on Fox News, quoting this article about that program. Okay, so let's talk about it. Now, in the comments on 50's post, there are lots of people going off saying, why are we giving this money to migrants when we're not giving that money to Americans? Lots and lots and lots of pro-Trump argle-bargle, because, of course, 50 ends his rant about it by saying maybe Trump is the answer. Really? Okay, let's start off by talking about the program itself. Here is an article that...
Before she goes on, I do want to note there are a lot of people who will say comments like, "Why are we giving all these money to these people as opposed to giving it to our people and other stuff like that?" And I don't think like I think that is valid for like our veterans and other stuff like that, or other people who are in like dire need and stuff. But I don't want people to be like envious of welfare because they think that all Americans should essentially be given kind of more welfare, because the fact is that if they just keep spending money, we're just never going to get into a good place, because they'll still have to keep charging someone money, taxing someone to keep paying for all the stuff. I'm seeing a lot of videos on TikTok right now of people very upset that they're paying taxes and they're like, "Oh, this is the first time I've filed and now I don't have a refund. I'm gonna have to pay. Like, how am I gonna pay $600, $800?" And people make videos about a couple $100s. In the comments, people are like, "I have to pay 3,000. I have to pay 2,000. I have to pay this," and they're like, "I don't know what to do." And so, a friend of mine came out with a video talking about all these responses, and she shared my sentiment. She's just kind of like, if you're a Republican and you complain about taxes and stuff, okay, but if you're like a Democrat and you want all these things funded and you want to send all this money to all these different places and you like Ukraine and so, like, where do you think this money like comes from? Like, they have to tax somebody. But people just have in their minds, well, we'll just tax like the super ooper duper wealth. Yeah, and they have all their guys who are going to help them try to get them as many discounts as possible. They'll still pay a lot of taxes. They'll still pay most of the taxes. But at some point in time, the people are going to have to be taxed. People who want like all these like um programs that other countries have where they're like, oh, well, they pay for this healthcare, they pay for education, they pay for all these things, and they say their rights. Yeah, and all the people are taxed very high as well. So we don't want to get to that point. People don't even want to pay like $800 and stuff. So um so I don't want people to just really cling on to that. They're getting this. How come I'm not getting that? Because as I already mentioned, like when people were just dishing out money during COVID, yeah, some people use that help responsibly, and I guess I think COVID's kind of a different thing because they did really shut down our economy. But some of the things that they implemented, like how they basically pay people to stay home, so the people were really splurging it on different goods like that weren't essential. And people put the money in the pocket, so how can you really, I guess, blame them so much? But fire hose of cash is not always the way. It's not always the way. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents before she went on.
Tells you factually what this program is about. Let me read a little bit of it to you. Use of these prepaid debit cards will only be permitted at bodegas, grocery stores, supermarkets, and convenience stores, with participating families required to sign an affidavit swearing to use the cards for food and baby supplies or risk being booted from the program, according to the Post, which compared it to the state's food stamp program known as SNAP. So again, the cards are like the SNAP cards that Americans also use in New York City. And now here's an important thing that you have to recognize, and this is a little bit more in the article. Not only will this provide families with the ability to purchase fresh food for their culturally relevant diets and the baby supplies of their choosing, but the pilot program is also expected to save New York City more than $600,000 per month, or more than $7.2 million annually. Why? Because New York City is already paying to feed these migrants who are in New York City shelters. They have a fiduciary duty to not let them starve to death. So they're already paying. Here's how much they're paying. According to City Hall, the savings are comparatively based on the current $11 per meal that the city is currently spending. The Post reported that a family of four could be provided nearly $1,000 each month, which comes out to just $35 per day for food. But they'd be buying food that they want, not food that's provided in the shelter. Let me explain why that is important. Food.
Again, they are cutting the cost down, but the $11 per day that they weren't paying already, I'm kind of baffled because school children, they'll pay like $3 per meal. It was like, well, $11 per meal is what they were paying these people who should not be here. That's the key thing. Like, she's like, we're saving money. Yes, they're saving money because you are paying for this stuff and you're cutting down the cost. But this is a cost that should not exist for New Yorkers. It's a cost that should not be imposed upon in Arizona. It shouldn't be a cost that's, imposed upon in California. It shouldn't be a cost imposed upon people of Texas or wherever these people are going. It should not be a cost. These people coming over are adding a burden to the system. They should not be here. And nowhere in Joy's video is she going to go on a big rant about how we need to close the border. Nowhere. So yes, they are paying these costs, but this should not be a cost at all as far as these people coming in here, because they don't belong here. But your school children, though, in New York, they do feed them with less money per meal than they were feeding these people who do not belong here. So I don't know why it was so expensive when they figured out a formula to feed your children for like three something a day. I mean, not a day and a meal, but they're paying them $11. When I saw $11 a meal, I'm like, they could that's if you go on the Taco Bell app, you get the Crunch Box combo and you get 2 of those and it'll be $10 and some change. So that's 2 meals from Taco Bell. If you go on the app. So I'm, you can easily spend $11 per meal. You can easily spend more than that in New York and any place. You go to, if you get a regular meal at like McDonald's or Wendy's or Arby's or something like that, it'll be $11 or more. Okay. So it's not impossible, but we're assuming that people who spend money for government stuff wholesale, that they'll get some kind of cheaper deal. But again, they probably don't think that they need to, because it's the government and you could charge whatever you would like to charge, because at the end of the day, you're going to get it and you're going to get your contract and you're going to feed your family. So what does it matter that Uncle Sam had to pay a higher bill? Before I move on, I do want to do a shout out to this. I got a super chat. Thank you, Danielle. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Anyway, let's keep listening to Joy here.
Waste. Food waste has been a major problem at migrant shelter city, with new arrivals coming from countries around the globe wanting culturally familiar food. More than 170,000 migrants have made their way to the 5 boroughs since the spring of 2022, and the tens of thousands in the city's care have raised concerns about the financial impact on city coffers. So basically, people are already coming anyway. Why are they coming? In part because of Ron DeSantis and the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who are literally shipping migrants to blue cities like New York. So the reason that New York is now overrun with migrants from places like Venezuela is because they're being sent there by Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, red state Trumpy MAGA governors. Now, the program is going to...
Why, Joy? Why did they do that? Why? Why shouldn't they have to do that? Why should Texas bear the burden of all these people coming in when there's so many preachy people in these blue areas that are just like, walls are racist? If you are a sanctuary city, they were like, okay, we're going to send the people there. If you live in these areas where they have deemed your place to be a sanctuary city and you don't feel like providing sanctuary, because when you actually look at it, it kind of sucks, you need to start to vote for other people who do not have a D next to their name. You need to vote for people who have an R next to their name. And just because they have an R next to their name doesn't mean that they're going to vote right. So you got to be on them too. You got to actually figure out what they claim they're going to do, and you need to make sure that they're going to do what they say they're going to do when they campaign. So you got to pay attention. You can't just go in November and then check out and then just look around one day and be like, oh, everything kind of sucks. No, you need to pay attention. You need to pay attention to these things. So if you don't like living by your ethics, if you don't like what sanctuary cities actually are like, if you don't like providing them sanctuary on your dime, at your expense, at the expense of your children going to school, and they kick your kids out. This happened in New York. They kicked the kids out, said, oh, you have to do remote learning because we're going to have the migrants come and spend the night. If you don't like things like that, you need to say, we need a wake-up call. This is our reality check, and we need to get our house in order. And what we're suggesting, what we've been politicking on, makes zero sense. You can be mad at Ron DeSantis. You can be mad at Abbott for doing what they did. You could be really mad. But again, they're just making you live by your own ethic. And if you can't handle it, maybe your ethics kind of suck. So she's not going to say we should build a wall. She's not going to say we should deport a bunch of people. She's just explaining the policy. But she had time to go at DeSantis and them.
Be administered by an organization called MoCaFi. Who is MoCaFi? I mean, it's Black History Month. We do still support Black-owned businesses, right?
First of all, you can support Black-owned businesses at any time. It doesn't have to just be Black History Month. And you can support any business that does a job that is good, that provides you a service that you need. Everyone has families to take care of, not just Black people, etc. Blah blah blah. So what we're just you add that part in, and people are just supposed to be okay and happy with it because it's a Black company that's managing the cards.
A little bit more about MoCaFi. MoCaFi is the Mobile Capital Finance Company. It's a Black-owned digital banking platform that targets more than 50 million unbanked and underbanked people in the U.S. Today, they have enrolled more than 25,000 users, raised more than 60 million in seed rounds, collaborated with Fortune 100 companies, and established a presence in major U.S. cities. So they open accounts for people who are underbanked, and that is overrepresented by Black folks. So to summarize, yes, New York City is going to spend $53 million, which is a fraction of New York City's budget, in order to make sure that the people they're already paying to house and feed in New York City shelters are able to pick their own food and buy it, rather than waste the food that they're mass serving in these shelters that's being thrown in the trash. They're going to partner with a Black-owned business and allow people to buy food at local bodegas, which is going to get those bodegas paid cash money. So they're saving money. They're doing what they already are doing anyway, spending less money on food, getting bodegas paid, and partnering with a Black-owned business. This is why you got to Google and do your little research before you believe, what anybody is saying. And so, I don't fault 50 at all for posting, about issues that are...
She said, do your research. Did she? I read the article before she talked about the article. Did she tell you guys anything that you were unaware of besides the fact that the business is Black? Did that make you guys like, oh, it's okay? Did that make it all better for you all? So 50 Cent shared this article that she read from. She didn't provide any other new information than that. So she's saying you got to Google. He did some research, and he was right to be concerned or whatever. The stuff she said was in the article. So,
important to our community. I actually welcome people with huge platforms, Black folk. We want everyone in the dialogue, but this is the reason that it's important to just get more information and have more information. If particularly you have a huge platform, we would really hope that people just have a little bit more before they post. But look, 50, stay in the dialogue, be in the dialogue. Happy to be in the dialogue with you. Please post the comments and let me know what you think about this program, which, by the way, is not a program that excludes our folks, because New Yorkers U.S. citizens already have access to SNAP. This is just extending that to people who wouldn't have access to SNAP because they're not U.S. citizens, but they're already getting food and shelter from New York City because they have to, right? You can't have these migrants in city-owned shelters and not feed them. They're just now going to pay less and get a black-owned business paid. So that's the information. I hope that helps everybody. I hope that helps you, 50. Y'all stay in the dialogue and be blessed.
One thing I don't know is whether or not people can still go get food from the shelter and still just use their card on other things. Does that mean that the shelter is not going to provide food? Because if people still show up to the shelters, don't they? She said they have to. So if they're like, oh well, we already used our card or something right through the food, are they gonna be like, oh, we can't feed you? So there's always the possibility that people will misuse this stuff, but again, they shouldn't be here for people. People make these complaints because it's money that should not be spent on folks who are not Americans. And even if they're like, well, black people, you can still get SNAP benefits and other stuff like that. Not everybody qualifies for that. And, I assume many people are grateful that they don't qualify for that. Or some people could be like, man, I could use some help with my groceries right now. And even if they're not in a dire circumstance where maybe they need SNAP benefits or something, they're still like, you're putting them in hotels and paying X amount of food. And you could say, well, those people, you should just be grateful that you're in a good situation and want to help other people out, et cetera, et cetera. I people have their feelings, I say this many times when I get to like different abortion debates and stuff. Like, to me, it really doesn't make sense how people feel like there's no like parental obligation to like carry your child for 9 months, but that they feel that there's an obligation to care for others, to care for strangers. And people are like, well, they're already here too. It's to me, it makes no sense. I'm not saying that people don't have some kind of moral obligation to care for other people. I'm a Christian. I believe there's a Christian duty to help people in need. I don't think the government is supposed to be the facilitator of forcing you to comply with that. I think people should, be giving out of the goodness of their heart. And I'm not saying that the government shouldn't have like some kind of like SNAP benefits and other stuff like that. But my point is, I don't understand how we can do this switch of it's survival of the fittest. You can't take care of yourself. Too bad, so sad. Basically, you don't have the right to life. And other people people crossing the Rio Grande and all going on these massive hikes to get here and everything, who should be more than capable of managing themselves somehow. It's like, oh well, we have such a moral responsibility for them and all kinds of different kind of people. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to help people. I just don't understand the mentality of you're vulnerable, I can't help you. And absolutely, we need to help these vulnerable people who are obviously not less vulnerable than the people that we think we should be able to. Anyway, let's watch Stephen A. Smith's complaints about the Democrats here. Again, I think the big point is that these people shouldn't be here at all, and they need to fix the border. But here's Stephen A. Smith and his rant, and I saw someone post this on TikTok, so I'm going to show. There is like this is from a show that he did, I guess, the other day. That's the entire thing is like not the entire topic. There's other topics he covers. It's like over an hour long, but I'm just going to play this TikTok that's clipped from that show.
I am no Republican. I voted for one Republican in my life. That's Governor Chris Christie in New Jersey, because I thought that Corzine was a disaster. I voted for Clinton. I voted for Al Gore. I voted for Barack Obama twice. I voted for Biden, despite the crime bill that incarcerated a whole bunch of people in the 90s that looked like me. I shoved all of that aside. All of it. Because I knew how divisive Trump would be. But as we sit here now, and we watch something like this transpire, where there seems to be more rapt attention being paid to folks who are not even here illegally, nor are from this country, yet we want to turn around and ignore us. Black folks, Latinos, and beyond, who are impoverished and are in need. We know why you're doing it. Because you want that voting block. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, what did I say years ago when I used to give speeches and say I wish for at least one election, everybody vote, every black person in America votes Republican? Remember when I used to say that? You know why I used to say it? Because you'd have to flatter us from that point forward. You couldn't just take the black vote for granted. You'd have to show us what you're bringing for us, what you're delivering to the table. And oh, by the way, it's not just addressing recidivism in the prison system. We need more than that. We deserve more than that. And we certainly don't deserve to be ignored because others who are in this country are being given stuff that's never given to us. I'm talking about my black and Latino brothers and sisters. Come on, y'all. Come on.
So, he did say at one point that he wishes that like all black people would just vote Republican like one time. And so, apparently from that time that he said that, he did not do that himself, but, he said that I think about 8 years ago, and he was on CNN and stuff talking about it. I went back and watched that interview and stuff. But yeah, he wanted or pitched the idea to Black Americans, like, let them know that they have to finesse you. I mean, not finesse. Finesse is like, I think that's like kind of slang, kind of pull the wool over your eyes. Sometimes can that be a bad thing to finesse? He wants to be wooed. He wants to be pitched to. He wants people to say, "Hey, we want to earn your vote. Here's some things for you, etc. We want to earn this. You know, you're not just a side chick who we will abuse or whatever. You're our number one girl." You know, the problem though is people who are swayed by the goodies. That's basically how they got the black vote in the first place. Now, I know a lot of people go immediately to like, you know, kind of more recent history with the exodus of you know, black Republicans to the Democrat Party, but like Goldwater and stuff like that. But the truth is that black voters started kind of defecting earlier than that. I think like 30s, maybe a little earlier than that stuff. But there are different promises that were made in the New Deal that started enticing black voters to go ahead and vote Democrat. Even being like the party of Lincoln, or knowing that the Republican Party was the one who, you know, had this history of freeing the slaves, and their ancestors and other stuff were Republican. But you know, so that some of them start switching for those what they believed was good economic opportunities that ultimately didn't help, and in some cases really hurt. If you hear Democrats talk about like systemic racism and other sorts of things like that, things that have led to crime and poverty and generational poverty and all that kind of stuff, number one thing that they'll probably mention, and maybe you could say it before I say it, but they'll say redlining, right? They'll say that, isn't that a policy that started under FDR? That wasn't no Ronald Reagan or something, you know? So, and then there's other policies like I've mentioned this quite a few times. It was a fascinating thing when I learned it, how much like history our country has with eugenics. But even things like minimum wage was something that was designed to help not the poorest of the poor or something, but to um, really hurt them and to help kind of like upperclassmen who didn't want to actually have to compete for wages. So people who they deemed uh, I don't know, like the lowest of the low, they're like, okay, well they probably won't hire them, but at least they won't like, let's say there's a black guy and a white guy or something. And eugenics isn't just like on the issues of like race or whatever, but let's just say black and white to keep it simple. So let's say there's a black guy who's willing to work for I don't know, $5. Of course that wouldn't go for today's time, but whatever, we'll just use this example. And there's this white kid who's just like, I don't want to work for $5. Okay, well we need a minimum wage and we'll get it up to 7 or something. I'll work for 7, I'm not working for 5. And then they're like, okay, we'll pass the minimum wage and we'll say it's going to be at 7. Okay, well they don't want to hire this black guy. They're more like they're going to hire this white guy. And so it's harder now for this black guy to provide for his family because the real minimum wage is 0. The real minimum wage is 0. If someone doesn't want to hire you, you ain't got no job, you ain't making no money. And so and they knew that those sort of things would happen because they already did it in Australia. Ended up making the Chinese not be able to work and other stuff like that, Chinese immigrants. So the history of the minimum wage is pretty fascinating. But Royal Meeker, who worked for the Woodrow Wilson administration, he was a eugenicist, and he believed that the minimum wage would end up making people have to go on welfare because of like situations where I just described. And then they thought it was a good thing because then they'd be on the government teat, and if they're on the government teat, basically they can keep a better eye on them rather than you being able to go out there and make something of yourself and be the master of your own sort of destiny. So when people on the right are quick to kind of dismiss a lot of like policies that are racial that have impacted black people and other stuff like that, I'm like, there kind of was a big plot to really mess up the different communities, not just the black community. And I think we kind of need to be aware of that because those things kind of have a negative impact still today. But the shame about it, though, is that people still advocate for these policies that are still not good. Because FDR, he thought that, like, for example, minimum wage, if a company couldn't pay those wages, or a living wage, actually, is how he put it. If a company can't pay a living wage, then they don't deserve to exist. That's pretty rough. I heard a Democrat say that a couple of years ago. Roe, kind of, I can't remember his name, but he got into a big he had backlash with that, and he ended up going on Ben Shapiro show to talk about it to kind of walk that back. But yeah, there's a lot of Democrats who feel that way. And I don't just mean like elected people. I mean their constituents, that if your job can't pay the fee, their minimum, what they want to be paid, then that job doesn't deserve to exist. And I'm like, well, who the heck are you to determine that? If someone is willing to work there and is willing to get paid that fee, maybe they just like the store. Maybe they just want to see it succeed. That mom and pop, you shop before, so they don't have to bring another Walmart into town or something. Maybe people want like the atmosphere there, and they're just willing to take the job for whatever reason. But who are you to say that they have to provide this amount in order to survive at all? But they end up, hurting these smaller businesses that can't pay for it, and then you can bring in like a Walmart or something, or an Amazon or other places that can afford to pay their workers those big wages. So it's really a big con for big business, for the elite, the elitist. And many people have these elitist attitudes, even though they're kind of broken bums. But that doesn't, just because you're a broken bum doesn't mean that you don't have an elitist mentality. So there are a lot of things in our history that weren't good policies that did disadvantage different groups, class groups, minority groups, and so on. Um, and it's okay to acknowledge that. um, but I wish that people would kind of acknowledge that those things still hurt us today, but they still keep pushing for it, and things really don't get too much better. um, I saw in I think Seattle, maybe. Um, maybe it wasn't Seattle, but it was a left wing area or whatever. They started adding on a delivery fee that was like an extra $5 for like the living wage of the app drivers or something. And so people decided to stop using the app so much. And so the drivers are complaining because now they have less work because people don't want to use the delivery apps because the stuff just got super expensive all of a sudden. So I understand people want to do a good thing, but just because you want to do a good thing doesn't mean that the economics is going to play out for people's benefit. Sometimes you just got to let the people who know how to build something do the work and you step aside. If you haven't built a company, if you don't know how those things work, just step aside and let people make whatever agreements that they want to make. Like if you're a contractor on that app, like on DoorDash or Uber Eats or something like that, if you don't want to take the offer, because there's like a base pay that they pay, and for deliveries, and then there's the tip or whatever, and sometimes they'll do different bonuses. If a driver doesn't want to accept that, then they don't have to accept it. Like it's they're contractors. The apps aren't paying them. Well, there's a per hour thing, but you don't have, you're not contracted to take as X amount of rides or X amount of whatever. It's whatever you want to do. So if the offer is not good, you don't have to take it. You don't have to waste your gas or whatever. But jacking up the prices so people don't even want to use the app, to me, it's crazy that people use it anyway. um, but I would rather. I know sometimes people just don't. Their time is more valuable, so they're just like, I'll pay this to get this here because I got to eat or whatever. But the amount of time that I'd be waiting, like to go get something and for it to come to me, I'm like, I could throw on something, go drive, and be back home by then. So I don't use those things too often myself. But you reach a limit when people start doing cost evaluations, and they're like, that really doesn't make sense to me. That really doesn't make sense to me given the money. So people will learn eventually, hopefully. As far as Stephen A. Smith saying that Black people need to kind of, consider voting for someone else. I don't know if people are going to actually do that, because he made that pitch before. He made that pitch at least 8 years ago, and he didn't take his own advice. He didn't take his own advice. So I don't think that Trump is less divisive now than he was in 2016. But I mean, people have the benefit of knowing that his first 3 years in office were pretty good financially for people. I don't know if everyone's just gonna forget year 4 happened with COVID, or people be like, well, it was COVID, so I understand, or whatever. Maybe they'll just write it off. Um, but will people just kind of forget what happened, like after the election and all that time since it? I don't know. So I know at the end of the day, people want me to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna have an awesome, huge Black turnout. It's gonna be the highest it's ever been. It could be the highest it's ever been. It could still possibly not be enough. If people think we're gonna get like 60% of the vote, I am just not that optimistic. Not because it's like totally impossible, but to make such a huge leap from what it's normally. I don't know. I think it's more. I think what's more likely, and perhaps this is the best thing that can happen. Perhaps perhaps minorities will just kind of dip out and just be like, you know what? I don't like Biden, and I don't really like Trump. and I'm just kind of gonna sit out a little bit. And I kind of feel like a little bit of whatever. Or maybe I think Trump might do better, but I just can't bring myself to vote for him. So maybe they'll just kind of sit out. And the more enthused voters will probably go out and be able to push their guy through. And maybe that'll be Trump. I think that's probably a more likely and successful outcome than all these black people who voted for Joe Biden having an epiphany and being like, I was really wrong in 2020. I need to. It's so hard for some people to admit that they made a mistake. Because even though Stephen A. Smith said something, you heard him say something that made so much sense. He said something that made a lot of sense 8 years ago. And again, didn't do anything to make that challenge himself. So I at the end of the day, I don't believe that there's going to be a 30% black vote for that would be high. That'd be maybe enough to turn the outcome of the election in Trump's favor. But I'm glad that there's been like a shift in the Hispanic, vote. Like it, they're really winning over, the Hispanic vote in Florida and other places like that. Trump could probably make more grounds with that group. And I don't think you necessarily even need to flatter people to get the vote, like do the pandering thing. I know people want to be pandered to. I know people want all of the bells and the whistles and the promises. And Trump tried that with the platinum plan and all the other kind of stuff. And it didn't work. Worked a little bit, didn't work enough. But I have to urge people kind of away from we just want the goodies, because someone still has to pay for the goodies and it can have different kind of repercussions, because the goodies is what originally led people away into this eternal voting pattern of voting for Democrats again and again and again and again and again. So if Republicans are just going to be like, okay, the Democrats are dropping the ball here, we need to do the goodies or whatever. Most of the time you do goodies, they're going to be spending goodies, and we're already not in a good place financially. So people need to have the courage to just say, you know what, I'm going to vote for who has good policies, not someone who's going to just write me a check, not someone who's going to just say things that just coddle my ego, someone who's just going to maybe foster a good economy, not going to get us engaged in too many foreign policy debacles, but will, when we're attacked, we'll defend. When people are kidnapped, we'll get them back and not make dumb deals. Who's going to focus on education, empowering me to do what's best for my children. Good policies are going to be good policies on the border. I don't need New York City to send me a SNAP card to make me feel better. I want someone who's going to be like, you know what, we need to fix the border. People need to make a commitment to say, I'm going to vote for good policy. I'm not going to do it based on who wants to bribe me for votes. Because they can give you bad policy if they know that you're basically a hooker. Don't whore out your votes. I guess is what I'm trying to say here. I understand people want, they want the offer. But I'm saying don't sell yourself short. Do what's right. Don't just do it for the dollar bills. Don't just do it for the dollar bills. Really be invested in good policy, because that's what's going to make the best change for the country. And I think right now the best sorts of things that are being proposed proposed by Republicans. And I think if people, overall, I get some Republicans, some are trash. Just to be honest, but the direction that we're going in right now is very bad. The crime is very bad. People not wanting to put people in jail is bad. People who are not into just releasing people, doing no bail thing. We're seeing terrible repercussions for that. The crime in DC is insane. Crime in New York and other places are insane. In Ben Shapiro's show, he talked about all these cops who are not coming back on the job, taking early pensions, and he showed some videos of different recruitment that just lowers the standards of physical activities and stuff for people to get in. There's one in Detroit. They're like, well, if you're worried about parking tickets and warrants that are out for you, we'll take care of it. I'm like, what? It's just, they're so desperate for cops and stuff, but they created such a bad environment for people to do their jobs. That you can't really blame people for not wanting to be cops and so on. So it's not, if they didn't feel it's worth it or whatever, they quit and do other things. And obviously it creates more incentive for criminals to do crime if they know people aren't likely to catch them, and even if they catch them, are they going to prosecute them? And even if they prosecute them, in some cases you don't know if the jury's gonna do the right thing. There's some cases where like people don't want to send people to jail because they're black or whatever. There was an episode of SVU where there was a girl who was sexually assaulted by a black guy, and she basically didn't want him to have to go to jail because she's like, well, I can get some therapy, but he won't survive jail. And it's just like, what's going to happen to the next person? What kind of dysfunction are you sowing into society where you think that these criminals should be able to get away based on their skin color so they can victimize someone else? Like, so many people concerned about race and racism are really creating a worse society because they're so obsessed with it. Just treat everyone like freaking human beings who are competent and can make their own decisions, who have agency. And when they do well, you want to work with them in society. And when they do poorly or even victimize someone else, that they have to face consequences. It's really, really that simple. It's really, really that simple. Last thing I want to mention before I let you guys go, because I am over on my hour. The Democrats are really trying to point the finger at Republicans and say, hey, they said that they wanted some kind of bill. The first thing they did, like Chris Murphy was on TV talking about, the first thing they did was pass a bill for immigration. And now they're saying they don't want this bill. And it's like, well, maybe they don't want that bill because it's not the same bill and it's not as good as what they originally proposed. It's like, it's really that simple, guys. And if it was like as good as what the House originally proposed, then perhaps they would back it. But you guys won't back it in the Senate. If Biden is so desperate, I guess they could have originally did this bill, but Biden didn't want to do it. But Biden could, again, always just repeal the executive orders that he peeled back with the Trump administration. Just renege on it, and you can fix a lot of stuff. But Chip Roy ended up posting this that compared the HR2 to the Senate compromise. So if anyone needs to see these differences as people are talking about this, I want to just make you aware of this so you guys can go to Chip Roy's page. But some of the differences, Senate on catch and release, the Senate bill that they tried to pass before ends catch and release by mandating the detention, removal, or return of illegal aliens instead of releasing them, as opposed to this Senate compromise that does not end catch and release, instead codifies the release of aliens into faulty alternatives to detention. Turn away authority fully ends mass release of migrants while giving DHS additional authority to turn away migrants to maintain operational control no matter what. And the Senate bill would codify mass release of migrants while requiring DHS to turn away only if 5,000 a day cross exempts children, paving the way for a surge of unaccompanied minors. That is true. Even if this is triggered, the bill forces Border Patrol to process a minimum of 1,400 migrants into the country at ports of entry. So I'm not going to go through mandates the construction of the border wall with the bill they had before, and this does not mandate the construction of the border wall. So that should be enough to really shut down it for Republicans. But it seems like I think McConnell has kind of backed off on it because he knows it's not going to go anywhere. But it's pretty much on arrival. But you have folks like Chris Murphy and other who are saying like, oh my gosh, they wanted this and now they're not going to stand for it. There's somebody I retweeted, Brian Schatz, said, just gobsmacked. I've never seen anything like it. They literally demanded specific policy, got it, and then killed it. That's what he said, man. And he's from Hawaii. Senator from Hawaii. No, it's not the thing that Republicans wanted. Some Republicans, sure, who compromise, and I hope is gonna get what's coming to them as far as like electoral consequences. But and I mean primaried. I don't want them replaced with Democrats, but I hope they're primaried at some point for these egregious sort of compromises they're willing to make. But if why did you just support HR2? Why don't you just say, you know what? Let's all pass HR2. Biden needs something so bad. Biden needs something so bad. So let's pass the HR2. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate it. You guys can check out different merch that's available at the website, like I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For t-shirt. We got this Be Better Not Bitter shirt and other stuff as well. You guys can check out my books and other things if you search my name on Amazon. But if you go to Black Tea News on the merchandise page, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website so you can see all my stuff and learn some more about the different things that I write. I do have 15 fiction books and the rest are nonfiction. One of my nonfiction books is my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. That covers rights, it covers theology, it covers science, but it covers the law, all sorts of different things. But of course, it does cover theology. And I thought it was important to talk about those things because I think people should be able to defend what they believe in. And even if people don't agree with your theology or whatever, why it still makes sense to still say that we all have inherent value and shouldn't be killed. So go ahead and check out that book. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow.